big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Happy Friday, one and all, from the world headquarters of GB News. This is Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. The weekend starts here, so bring your own drinks. The admission is free. On tonight's show, it's Sir Keir Starmer being dishonest when he says Joe Biden is too old to be president. Is it wrong for your boss to call or email you out of hours? We now have the least religious parliament in history. Does it matter? As they descend into civil war, have the wheels already fallen off for Nigel Farage's Reform UK? And if England beats Spain on Sunday, will Sir Keir Starmer be the biggest winner? To fall out over all those topics tonight, my Friday A-team, BBC radio legend Alex Dyke, Britain's best-dressed sports broadcaster Aidan McGee, and fearless political commentator Reem Ibrahim. Also tonight, as Ed Miliband angers unions with his banning of oil and gas exploration, and with the party divided over workers' rights and business red tape, is Sir Keir Starmer's honeymoon already over? I'll be tackling Labour's first 8 days in power in my Friday feeling. That's straight after the headlines with Sam Francis.
Mark, thank you very much, and good evening to you. It's just after 8 o'clock, and the top story from the newsroom tonight is that Metropolitan Police Force are searching a property in London as part of their ongoing investigation into human remains that were found in suitcases in Bristol. These are the latest pictures of the crime scene, now in place at a location in Shepherd's Bush. That's in the west of the capital. We now know the bodies found in those two suitcases near Bristol's Clifton Suspension Bridge are believed to be those of 2 adult men. Inquiries suggest a man identified as the main suspect travelled to Bristol from London on Wednesday before the remains were found. Police have issued a warning not to approach the suspect, and if anyone does see him, to call 999 immediately. The security guard who plotted to kidnap, to rape and to murder Holly Willoughby has been described as a calculating sexual predator. Chelmsford Crown Court was told Gavin Plum, who's been jailed today for at least 15 years, had graphic and sexualised conversations with others online about attacking the TV presenter. Detective Chief Inspector Greg Wood from Essex Police led the investigation.
Planned this attack on Miss Willoughby over a 2-year period, scoping her movements, seeking help from others and buying items that would incapacitate and inflict violence. He is not a fantasist. He's a calculating sexual predator who has spent his adult life seeking to inflict violence on women.
In other news, this afternoon, the new Justice Secretary confirmed urgent measures to tackle what she's called the overcrowding crisis in prisons. On a visit to Five Wells Prison, Shabana Mahmood has warned that overflowing jails could, she says, lead to the chaos in the criminal justice system. She claims police will soon be unable to detain criminals and courts could be forced to delay trials within weeks. The early release scheme means some inmates will be freed after serving just 40% of their sentence. Meanwhile, in the US, President Biden is insisting he will push ahead with his re-election bid to the White House, despite 2 standout mistakes at the NATO summit this week. Speaking at the end of the 3-day event in Washington, he referred to the Ukrainian president as President Putin, as well as mixing up his own vice president with his election rival. Take a listen.
Ukraine will prevail in this war, and we'll stand with them every single step of the way. That's what the compact says, loudly and clearly. And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. We're going to beat President Putin. President Zelensky.
And as I mentioned there just after that gaffe, speaking a short while later with questions from journalists, he went on to mix up the names of his Vice President, Kamala Harris, and Donald Trump.
I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be Vice President, but I think she was not qualified to be President. So let's start there.
And to sport now, a professional snooker player has been jailed for 3 years for domestic violence. Michael White's been convicted of multiple offences lasting over a year. The 37-year-old from South Wales has also been removed as a member of the World Professional Snooker Association. And one last story for you from sport before we hand back to Mark. England manager Gareth Southgate says his team's big match experience will be vital in their Euro 2024 showdown against Spain on Sunday. They've reached the tournament's final for a second time in a row after being beaten by Italy on penalties at Wembley in 2021. And ahead of Sunday's match, the King has asked the England squad to alleviate the blood pressure of the nation by avoiding any late drama in the final. But these psychic penguins at London Zoo, well, they're predicting a disappointing result. They say a penguin never lies, but we will find out on Sunday. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis. Up next, it's Mark Dolan. I'll be back with you in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening. Well, we've had a new government in post for 8 days now, and so far, no resignations and no scandals. How boring. Maybe Sir Keir Starmer should bring Boris Johnson or Liz Truss into his cabinet just to spice things up a bit. But this is politics, and as sure as night follows day, there is already trouble brewing. The Labour-supporting trade unions are furious with Energy Secretary Ed Miliband for rolling out an immediate ban on the exploration of oil and gas in the North Sea. They're worried about its possible impact on the economy, on energy prices, and on tens of thousands of jobs. Ed Miliband, a man who did untold damage to the Labour Party when he beat his brother Ed to the leadership, paving the way for Jeremy Corbyn, well, he strikes again. It's good to hear that our new Labour government will seek to push back against NIMBYism and communities resisting house building with a proper commitment to build the homes Britain desperately needs. And we have a Chancellor in Rachel Reeves who rejects socialism and is focusing on economic growth by which to deliver Labour's policy goals. Happy days. But that's only going to work if energy prices are low and if supply is plentiful. Unlikely given Miliband's expensive plan to bet the house on flaky renewables. And Rachel Reeves will only get the strong economic growth we all want if she adopts a business-friendly approach, which is unlikely given that the Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner wants to burden companies with red tape, empower the trade unions and ban zero-hours contracts, the flexibility of which over 1 million people enjoyed last year. Plus, zero-hours contracts give companies the casual labour that they need to keep them ticking over. Plus, Rayner's plan, about which Labour grandee Lord Peter Mandelson has grave concerns, makes it harder to sack useless members of staff. Like that guy in the office who thinks that watching TikTok videos and bidding for air fryers on eBay is work, and who thinks keeping his jacket on the back of his chair all day means people won't notice that he's gone out for a 3-hour lunch break. Barry in accounts, we see you. So Miliband and the unions are miles apart, and Rayner and Reeves are miles apart. Mark my words, there is an almighty political row brewing between sensible figures in the party like Reeves and tub-thumping populist Rayner, who seeks only one audience, the left of the party. Not to mention eco-fanatic Ed Miliband, who is now disliked as much by the unions as by his own brother. Labour might be enjoying a honeymoon, but the marriage is already on the rocks. Let's bring in my Friday A-team. BBC radio legend Alex Dyke, Britain's best-dressed sports broadcaster Aidan McGee, who's already drunk and it's not Sunday yet, and fearless political commentator Reem Ibrahim. Great to see all three of you. Reem, let me start with you. I am determined to celebrate any successes of this new government. It's a fresh start, and I'm going to back Starmer all the way if he gets things right. But there's trouble brewing, particularly when it comes to Ed Miliband's energy policy.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Mark. I completely agree. I think that the stuff on housing is really positive. I was quite happy to see Reeves talk about the importance of increasing the supply of housing. It's funny they understand that increasing supply actually brings down prices when it comes to housing, but not when it comes to energy. The idea that actually, you know, it's economics 101. You increase the supply of something, prices will come down. The same applies to energy. And actually, by completely banning all new North Sea oil and gas licences, effectively what you're doing is restricting the supply, as we saw that occurred as a result of the war in Ukraine, and that brings up prices. So it makes energy more expensive for everyday people in this country. I suspect there will be those internal political divides within the Labour Party really coming to light over the next few months.
Indeed, I think there is a clear division between the left and the right of the party on a range of issues, Aidan. On energy, you've got Ed Miliband versus, amazingly, the trade unions, who are furious about this rejection of fossil fuels. And then you've got this divide between the likes of Rachel Reeves and Lord Mandelson on the economy and Angela Rayner.
You have, but look, this is all strategic, Mark. I mean, we've seen this before. I remember back in 1997, I go back to that because it's the most comparable era.
When you were about 11, by the way.
I was just starting secondary school, yeah. No, I wasn't. I was just starting. I just did my A-levels that year. So, no, I didn't. Yeah, it was the year before, sorry. Anyway, this is the strategy. In the early weeks of the Parliament, when they've got a huge majority, you get the unpopular policies out of the way. So Blair did it back in 97. I remember my dad thinking to me, goodness me, these are more right-wing than Major and Thatcher put together. That was in the first month. Anyway, they delivered some really...
That's right. The new Labour government in 97 kept the Tory spending plans for 2 or 3 years.
Longer than that, yeah. The first term, yeah, I'd certainly say. So they didn't change very much. But then you've got the actual liability factor of Ed Miliband. The Tories did a jig of delight when he became leader of the Labour Party back in 2010. And he should have done the job of an interim leader of the party who should have closed the gap on a coalition. So it wasn't even a strong government, it was a coalition. He failed to close that gap, and he landed him with an even bigger defeat in 2015. So the man is a liability, and he's showing it even more now because, as I understand it, we're going to be paying Norway £14 billion for energy that they're going to be getting from our own resources.
Yeah.
I mean, how can that possibly amount to any kind of common sense economically? And if given that Labour governments have historically had trouble convincing the electorate that they can be trusted on the economy, this isn't a very good start.
Labour would argue, Alex, that if you're going to have a green revolution, you've got to get rid of fossil fuels. The planet is heating up. It's causing disasters around the world already. Ultimately, the price will be a far higher one if we don't act now.
Yeah, and we need... If there's ever been a time when we should be exploring more in the North Sea, surely this is it, after supplies being cut off.
What about global boiling?
Well, I know, but nobody...
I mean, look at you, you're sweating tonight.
I know. In an ideal world, we'd all be driving electric cars and eating satsumas, but life's not like that. And until we can actually do the job properly without fossil fuels, we have to keep digging.
So
and
do you think this is an act of self-harm to go green so quickly?
Yes, I do. And look at the jobs. Look at all of the jobs in the industry. Look at the power that it gives Great Britain by being able to provide this. Why should we be buying power from everyone else, particularly the Russians, which obviously we're not at the moment, but, you know, I believe some of it...
We have been, and the Germans have been reliant on Vladimir Putin's oil and gas for years.
Yes.
Alex, I think you're right, but I think you're being way too soft about this. I mean, for goodness sake, this kind of thing, effectively net zero, implementing a top-down target is making people poorer in this country. It's a bunch of socialist nonsense, in my opinion. And the Conservative Party have peddled that line. Net zero was implemented by a Conservative government. And now we're seeing the Labour Party continue that line. Effectively, what we're doing is we're seeing arbitrary national targets. We're saying we're going to be net zero by a certain date, and then a bunch of other regulations and bans that occur as a result of it. These policies make people poorer. The solution to climate change, Mark, is the free market. It is capitalism. It is businesses and technological advancements occurring which reduce inefficiency.
Well, what about those jobs in green energy that Labour are going to deliver? Potentially hundreds of thousands of green jobs.
It's not the government's
job. And also,
job.
if we have solar panels and wind farms, then Britain becomes energy independent and bills will come down.
But most people can't afford solar panels. They're not cheap. To have that kind of investment costs a lot of money.
And they're horrible to look at, Mark, aren't they? I mean, if I had them put on my rentals, not only is it a huge undertaking for my tenants, but I mean, I've just got he had a logo for Octopus Energy on his forehead or on his cap. And,
not a good look.
Why can't
I just paid them £1,800 for energy I didn't even know I used.
In this day and age, Mark, why can't they make solar panels look like nice, attractive roof tiles?
Well, perhaps they're working on that. But isn't that the point, though, that if you go green, you're going to be energy independent? That's what Labour are arguing, Alex Dyke. Is that not attractive?
It is
green
attractive.
Jobs, energy independence.
It is attractive.
You're supposing a lot there.
It looks great on paper.
Doesn't look so good on your roof.
No, that's true.
But it's a lie. It's effectively the government.
But if we have wind, that's free energy, isn't it?
It's not how it works at all. The government are absolutely wasting money. They're throwing money down a bureaucratic black hole by spending taxpayer money on green energy that could well end up being completely useless.
OK, well, listen, folks, lots more to come. Is it wrong for your boss to call or email you out of hours? What's that? Oh, Angelos, yeah, I'll text you in a minute. And is Sir Keir Starmer being dishonest when he says Joe Biden is not too old to be president? Are we being lied to? We'll debate that next.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
No one wants their child to be a fussy eater. But what is the secret to expanding your child's culinary horizons?
Is there a way to get kids away from the kids' menu, the fish fingers, the chips? Joining us now is the UK's top-selling author of children's cookery books, Annabelle Carmel. Good morning, Annabelle.
Thank you. So lovely to be here.
So, first of all, what's the issue with kids just having the traditional easy meals like fish fingers, chips, beans?
It really depends if they've got preservatives in them, if they're full of salt. So I like to make them myself, and it's really easy. So I make my own chicken glazed nuggets, and super easy to make using proper pieces of chicken. You can cook them in the air fryer now, which is absolutely brilliant, so you need to fry them. And I think that it's really important that children grow up loving good food, because they make their minds up by the age of 5 what they like and what they don't like, and it's quite difficult to change their minds after that. But it's good to know that fussy eating is genetic. It's not to do with your cooking.
Oh,
that's not to say that you can't do something about it. So I've written many, many books, and I have an app with 1,000 recipes on it, and a lot of how to make your own junk food, how to make your own isolis out of fresh fruit.
Yes.
How to make your own pizzas. I make the most amazing homemade pizza. I actually brought you some cookies here.
Okay, so these are your books here. So my first cookbook, that's for how old children?
That's from the age of 1.
OK, and you've got a weaning one at the end, the baby one?
Yes, that's my very first book. I lost my first child. It was really sad. She died at the age of 3 months. And my second child was the world's worst eater. And I wrote that book as my legacy to Natasha, never thinking that it would start a whole career.
Oh, bless you.
It sold millions of copies, and it's still popular.
Is it quite pivotal and important that you introduce kids to the weaning stage, or, you know, how important
It's very important, because the processed weaning food in pouches or jars, it's heated, so a lot of the vitamins aren't there anymore, so making your own is so easy and much cheaper.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner wants to introduce new legislation banning companies from contacting their staff out of hours by phone or email. Is this an important protection of the work-life balance, or socialism in action, feeding the monster of work-shy Britain? Alex Dyke, you're not work-shy.
I'm not work shy, but I've been privileged to have, for most of my working life, jobs that I love, jobs that I adore, like broadcasting on radio for many, many years. So if my phone went from my boss, unless it was a rollicking, I never worried about it. Sometimes it was a telling off.
Because you worked for the Beeb and you were always in trouble because you were so naughty.
Yeah, and on commercial radio as well, right? Back in the day. Yes, but my point is...
You dared to have an opinion.
Because I dared to have an opinion. And, of course, that was fine until the stuff hit the fan, and then everyone steps back, and then they're phoning me at night time saying, you never guess what's going to be in the papers
You had
tomorrow.
a bit of a BBC scandal for the most innocuous remarks, which were tongue-in-cheek.
Yes.
About breastfeeding.
Yes.
And I listened back to it, and I agreed with every word you said, but for that you were taken off air for a few days.
Yes.
But therefore the bosses were in touch outside of your working hours.
Yes, but can I just say that was done in the days of Top Gear, when Jeremy Clarkson was saying what he was saying.
Yeah,
Chris
you were doing
Moyles,
jokes about Mexicans and God knows what else.
Yeah, and Chris Moyles and Chris Evans, and it was a joke. I've been married twice. I have 3 children from my first wife, my wife I have now, and all 3 of those children were breastfed. Yeah. It's wonderful.
And you have videos of people breastfeeding on your phone and everything. You're an enthusiast.
Well, there you go.
You've done your homework on that one. But anyway, my point. It's my fault we got slightly sidetracked by breastfeeding, as you would. But
you've been wanting to get that in since the very first show I've done.
I wanted to get the breasts out. I did.
Anyway, my point is that it all depends what job you have, what kind of relationship you have with your boss. Some people wouldn't mind it, but one size doesn't fit all. And I think if you're in the business we're in, it's not unusual to get a call at 11 o'clock at night saying things have changed for tomorrow morning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, what do you think, Aidan? I mean, you're a landlord, so people contact you probably 24/7?
Not 24/7, but I've had calls on Christmas Day. I had a problem 2 years ago, and I had to get it sorted. And I live 200 miles
Was
away.
that Jesus looking for a home?
No, not quite. Not quite. I can't remember the name of him now.
I should say his parents. I'm showing my ignorance.
Oh, was it? Yeah, it was
Mary and Joseph.
Mary and Joseph.
Yeah, so there was that.
Come on, Mark, read the
I've had a few
Bible.
donkeys. I can put.
Have you got a spare barn going?
No, shed at best. But no, I have an interesting take on this because I grew up. My parents had care homes growing up, and it was their business for many, many years, and so it wasn't uncommon to get a call at 3 o'clock in the morning because somebody had fallen out of bed. That was just me. No, joking. No. But
that's you on Sunday night after England win the Euros.
Exactly. No.
I think that's all of us on Sunday night after we win the Euros.
Let's hope so.
No one is going to the office on Monday, let's be clear.
So, I just, that's the culture I grew up with. I can think of a time in 2009, talking about football, I was working for the News of the World. I was watching Chelsea against Barcelona in the Champions League at Stamford Bridge. The referee was a Norwegian guy called Tom Henning Overby. I've never heard of this bloke. I'm thinking he's made an absolute fool of himself tonight. He's got every decision wrong. And 10 o'clock next morning, I'm in his garden looking through his window. His kid's painting. He's trying to locate where he is because I'd had their call that night saying, you're on a flight tonight, get over to Norway, get over to Oslo, you've got to track this bloke down. Didn't find him at the end. Apparently UEFA had told him to escape to the fjords.
My goodness, imagine
most businesses require those kind of negotiating in those contracts, and I think what Angela Rayner is proposing, which is effectively completely banning that kind of communication between bosses and their employees, is absolutely ludicrous. It's really unnecessary red tape, and also the fact of the matter is employers and employees should be allowed to negotiate the terms of their employment contracts without the governments unnecessarily getting involved. This kind of red tape is only unhelpful, and I'm not being funny, but it completely distrusts companies and employees to make those kind of negotiations themselves.
It will make us less competitive as well, Mark, because we may do it in this country, but you can bet your life there will be plenty of regions in the world who will not.
They won't be doing it in America. They won't be doing it in South Korea or China or
India.
Japan.
We are actively making the UK more uncompetitive as a result of this kind of...
Can I defend Angela Rayner, though? There are people who wind up working extra unpaid hours because they get a query from work and they're back on the computer. High stress levels. This is exploitation.
If you've got a fair employer...
exploitation, Mark. That's socialist nonsense.
Mark, you're assuming that all the employers are unfair. I mean, usually if I was working out of hours, sometimes I get the hours back or sometimes a day off in lieu. That was certainly the case at my previous employer.
OK, don't you think briefly, Alex, it's protection for against exploitative bosses?
Yes,
that's what Labour wants to do.
Yes, and there will be some people who will benefit if this went through.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's going to go through. But there are some people out there who are bullied by their bosses.
Why does Angela Rayner think she knows better than business owners? That's my question.
I've just received an email from the station controller at BBC Radio Solent. He wants you back on Saturday morning. Why don't you send him a quick reply?
I will. 2 words.
Unrepeatable.
Yes, please.
Unrepeatable on national...
Oh, I've sent it!
Oops, that's awkward. OK, moving on. Sir Keir Starmer spent the pandemic pretending to be Prime Minister by hosting those ridiculous, spontaneous press conferences in which he called for more needless lockdowns. Now that he's the actual Prime Minister, the great hope is that now he's got the top job, he would be a bit more straight with the public. Less spin, less virtue signalling, less naked politics. No such luck. Arriving in Washington, Starmer joined the conspiracy of silence around an increasingly confused President Joe Biden and continued to gaslight anyone with eyes and ears by saying the president was, quote, on good form and that their meeting was supposed to be 3/4 of an hour in length but wound up being the best part of an hour. A lot of verbal gymnastics going on there. Isn't 3/4 of an hour the best part of an hour anyway? Make it make sense. Sir Keir is either naive about President Joe Biden or just being plain dishonest as he goes on to tell the press that Biden is not too old to be president. Starmer's words, not for the first time, come back to haunt him. As hours later at the NATO conference, Biden introduces the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky as Vladimir Putin. Take a listen.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin.
Oh, dear, that's awkward. He also had a strange description of his deputy president, the vice president, Kamala Harris. Take a listen.
I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, that I think she was not qualified to be president. So let's start there.
Vice President Donald Trump, she's not qualified to be president. I didn't realise that Trump had transitioned. I guess it is 2024. Yes, according to Sir Keir Starmer, Biden is on great form and not too old to be president. This is the same Sir Keir Starmer who wants over 80s in the House of Lords to retire. Make it make sense. Starmer there once again usurped by his own bland, phony rhetoric. Whilst Joe Biden is America's president, he's our president too. He's the leader of the free world, and that's why this matters, not just to Americans, but to you and me as well. This is about the safety of the world. And as for Biden's latest Ukraine howler, I'm no military expert, but if you can't tell the difference between an ally and the enemy, then you're probably not going to win the war. Aidan McGee, what a nightmare.
I know, look, I've given up kind of being critical of Biden now because I think that it's got to the point where it's very sad. I'm not the first person to say it, but this isn't a recent thing either, Mark. I noticed this in the first months of his presidency back in the start of 2021. He clearly was suffering cognitive difficulties.
Yes.
You saw even on the televised debates last week, Donald Trump, who normally would go for hell for leather, he actually withdrew slightly because he recognised that this was actually something quite unedifying that we were watching on television. And so every time he's put out on screen, we see that he makes a mistake. The policies don't help either, it has to be said. I think his decision to withdraw from Afghanistan brought about a lot of the international troubles that we've seen around the world since then. But it's time to step aside, and I just don't think, unfortunately, they can see anybody who can possibly win an election. This is the Democrats I'm talking about here.
Alex, what do you make of Sir Keir Starmer's comments that Joe Biden is not too old to be president and that he was on great form?
Well, first of all, the best part of an hour, I reckon he thought he was getting 45 minutes and he got 35 or 32, and he thought, I can actually say that's the best part of an hour.
Exactly right.
The worst part.
I think the thing is with President Biden now is he's under an immense pressure not to screw it up, and when you're told, don't get it wrong, it puts even more pressure on a man who quite clearly shouldn't be doing the job because there's something going on. As I said last time I was on the show, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a neurologist, I'm not a doctor, but I think we can all see, and we've probably seen, a lot of us have seen this with our elder relatives, there's something going on here, and can you imagine the pressure that he's on? But as far as Keir's concerned, what does he do? You can't very well have the job for a week and then go and slag off the president.
You can't.
Keir Starmer's been
not stupid. He'll know this.
He's been put in an impossible situation, and any journalist worth their salt will say, so what did you think? So he's got to come back with something that's not going to offend the Americans and not going to make him look an idiot.
I agree, but I think that Reem, should be the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, because I would
vote for you.
Oh, bless you for that. You've obviously had a drink, but God bless you. It's Friday night. I would actually give the media a straight bat. I would say the health of the president is a matter for the American people. That would be my answer. What I wouldn't do is I wouldn't say he's on great form. I wouldn't say what a lot of the talk show hosts in America have been saying, which is he's as sharp as a tack, smarter than he's ever been. That is lying.
It is lying. And also what's really interesting is that CNN themselves have come out and said maybe this guy needs to step down. I think that you're right in that the actual matter for themselves is for the American people. But this is about the international arena. This is about global hegemony, and this is about international politics. And whether we like it or not, the United States is one of the most powerful countries in the Western world, if not the most powerful country, the leader of the Western world. And therefore we must ensure the President of the United States, and it's in all of our interests to do so, has some kind of cognitive ability. The fact that Biden...
Some kind of cognitive ability.
Some kind of great self-forgiveness.
I think many people, Reem, are going to choose Trump in November over Biden purely because Trump actually doesn't have dementia. That's basically how low the bar is now. But he's not mentally ill.
I think the problem here is, though, that he's already made a couple of pretty serious gaffes, and there's a long time to go between July and November. You don't know what is coming round the bend, so I think that's why a lot of people, high-profile people like George Clooney this week have said, maybe it's time to step down.
Exactly. Reem, it's quite a sad situation where we need Hollywood actors like George Clooney to say it like it is.
Yes, I mean,
George
look,
Clooney said he must stand down.
I think Hollywood actors tend to poke their nose into politics sometimes and they tend to get it wrong, but I think George Clooney is right in this instance. I think what's interesting about this in this perspective is, yes, it's sometimes quite funny to watch him make mistakes. Yes, it's quite interesting from an American perspective, but we're talking about the future of the free world here.
Correct.
Biden needs to go.
Yeah, so can we just go back briefly, Aidan, to our Prime Minister, though? I mean, he's not being honest by saying Joe Biden was on great form.
No, of course
he's not too old to be president.
He's in an invidious position.
It's a habit of a lifetime from Starmer, isn't it?
Yes, it is a little bit, and it maybe sets the tone for the rest of his term. We don't know, but we all want to give him a chance and get behind him if we possibly can.
Don't you think you would have got a smarter answer from someone like Rishi Sunak?
No, I don't actually. I think he would have said exactly the same thing.
I don't think Rishi Sunak would have said he's on great form.
Can we just say, sorry, look at the debate between Sunak and Starmer. The fact that Starmer effectively defended the NHS by saying that, you know, even if his family member was literally on death's door, he would not use private healthcare because he loves the NHS so much.
It's kind of true.
Starmer is absolutely terrible at media. He's a terrible politician. I'm not saying his policies are not going to be great. We're going to see what that looks like over the next few months. But actually, specifically, he's not very good at answering questions like that. I undoubtedly think Sunak would have answered the question better.
OK, of course, Sunak is gone. Starmer is in the hot seat. Of course, plenty would argue that the Prime Minister had to give a diplomatic answer about the President in order to preserve the special relationship. OK, folks, coming up, we now have the least religious parliament in history. Does it matter? And as they descend into civil war, have the wheels already falling off for Reform UK? Nigel Farage under the microscope. Next.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. Looking ahead to the weekend, and Sunday looks largely dry for many places, but through Saturday there will be some showers and some more persistent rain affecting eastern parts due to a weather system that's pushing its way in from the North Sea. So overnight, many eastern parts of England are going to turn largely cloudy and there'll be some persistent rain for some of us. Further west, a greater chance of staying dry, but even here, some outbreaks of rain at times and quite a bit of cloud for many of us, though there will be some breaks in a few places over central western Scotland perhaps. Here temperatures could just about dip into high single figures, but elsewhere it's going to be a relatively mild start to the day tomorrow. It is also going to be a damp start for some eastern parts. Starting off looking in the south though, across central southern parts, some brightness first thing, 1 or 2 showers perhaps. A cloudier story as we head further north, particularly towards the east in those North Sea coastal parts. It is going to be quite a grey, damp day through much of the day. Some brightness perhaps for Northern Ireland, and the best of the sunshine across Scotland will also be towards western areas further east. We will see some thickening cloud and some outbreaks of rain pushing their way in. All that rain then towards eastern parts will make its way a little bit further westwards as we go through the day. So more places seeing some rain for a time, but it will be breaking up a little bit as we go through the day as well. Further west, yes, a better chance of seeing some brighter breaks in the cloud and also a few showers, so these not as heavy as those that we've seen today. Temperatures still a little bit on the low side for the time of year, just about scraping into the low 20s. Much of the rain will clear away as we go into Sunday, though clinging on to some rain in the far east of England first thing. Otherwise, some bright sunny spells, again some showers likely to develop, but these won't be quite as widespread as those that we've seen through today and we'll see through tomorrow. So a drier day for many before the rain is likely to return early next week. Bye-bye.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Simon Evans, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Times newspaper report that Britain has elected the most godless parliament in its history, with Sir Keir Starmer becoming the first atheist PM for decades. Half of the cabinet and 40% of MPs chose to make a non-religious oath when becoming sworn into the House of Commons this time round. So, is it the right thing to keep God out of government, Reem Ibrahim?
I think so. I think we need to have a separation of the church and the state, which we don't really have necessarily. I mean, we still have the Church of England, which our monarch is the head of. I think that you absolutely can be moral without religion. I grew up in a very, very religious Muslim household, and I left Islam about 2 years ago, and I don't believe in anything, and I think I'm a pretty moral person.
You most certainly are, definitely. What do you think about this, Aidan? I mean, is it useful that our leaders have some kind of faith? Is that a resource they can tap into in difficult times?
Not really. I'm a practising Catholic. I go to church every Sunday still. I'll be praying for England this Sunday, actually. But I would say that if you look at...
I hope you've got a hotline to the man above.
Yeah, I'll have you. He'll save me. He'll save us.
Does he take your call?
Yeah, of course he does. Yeah.
Does he stop speaking?
He's on speed dial.
Is that it? He stopped talking to Alex ever since the breastfeeding debacle.
Oh, will you leave that? It was a joke, everybody. It was a joke, OK? You know what a joke is?
It was a very good joke as well.
I judge people by their integrity and the standard of their morality, and if... all those parliamentarians, and I doubt many of them will be, to be perfectly honest with you, but if they hold themselves to that kind of standard, that's good enough for me. It doesn't matter. It's probably... I'm sure this can't be the first parliament where we've had a godless parliament.
How many Christian
or... measuring it in the past?
How many politicians claim to be Christian and then end up cheating on their wives? The amount of times that you can actually say, I believe in God, I'm a Christian, I'm a Muslim, and yet at the same time do things that are entirely antithesis to your supposed faith.
Tony Blair didn't even announce that he was Catholic until he left office.
Yeah, and what do you think about this, Alex? Rishi Sunak said that actually his Hindu faith helped him when he was in office, although it didn't really help him on the 4th of July.
I think faith is very, very important, whoever your God is. But we don't need...
And yours is Noel Edmonds, isn't it?
No, it's not old Edmund. If I'd had a God, it would have been Alan Fluff Freeman, not Arf.
That would be it.
Anyway, I believe it's what's inside you. That's where faith is important. The person that it makes you. But I don't think we should have politics and religion mixing. Look at Sunday opening hours. You can't go to Tesco at 4:30. It's closed.
Abolish Sunday trading.
So, and who's that for? Everyone who's a member of the Church of England, even probably 7/8 of the Church of England they want to go and get a pizza at 4:30. So who does that help? Religion and politics and business.
4:30.
Yeah, but my point is supermarket Sunday opening time.
Sainsbury's won't be open at
5 o'clock. A lot of small towns after 5, you're not going to get Tesco, Sainsbury's, or Asda, are you?
I think in London things are shut on a Sunday evening in most places. What I will say is I think that Christian values are important. So I would like politicians that uphold Christian values. I think that the idea that actually the nuclear family is the ideal family setup, the idea that faith and tradition, and I think more so British values and Christian values should be valued by politicians.
Kindness.
There you go. Maybe bring back Christmas as well. Who knows? A controversial idea. OK, there's trouble in paradise, folks. Tensions within Reform UK have spilled over after the victorious leader, Nigel Farage, ousted its 2 long-standing deputy leaders in Ben Habib and David Bull. Whilst David Bull moves on with a pledge to support the party and pursue a broadcasting career, Habib is not taking this lying down. In a parting shot, he said he's considering his position within the party and said, I have long held concerns about the control of the party and the decision-making processes. Ouch. Reading between the lines, some concerned party supporters are worried that Reform UK is nothing more than a vanity project for Mr Farage in what has been described as the Nigel Show. It's a tricky one, this, isn't it? On the one hand, no one man or woman is bigger than the party, and unchecked power does corrupt. On the other hand, without Farage, there is no Reform UK. But is it dangerous to give one individual so much control? After all, Farage is a major shareholder in Reform UK, which is an actual company. Or is Nigel Farage being in the driving seat essential for him to deliver a political revolution? What do you think, Reem?
I think that Nigel, I mean, Reform UK would be literally nothing without Nigel. And I think that ultimately Farage himself was able to bring the party together, was able to win them those 5 seats. And I understand potentially where Ben Habib is coming from, but I think this is kind of internal politics that would ruin the party. They need all of the support that they can get in order to actually oppose the Conservative Party. I mean, again, I'm not necessarily party political, but what I want to see is these conversations about the future of the right, the ideology of the Conservative Party, and indeed the right as a whole, to really happen, and reform is crucial to that.
Aidan, was it power corrupts absolutely? Does Nigel Farage have too much control of one political entity, Reform UK?
Look, you could make that argument, certainly. But as Reem said, he is the X factor. Without him, they would have probably got about 500,000 votes. They wouldn't have laid a glove on anything. They certainly wouldn't have any kind of foothold in Parliament. Now, the disappointing thing for me is that this is still a small organisation. 5 MPs at the moment. They've got to stick together because every kind of stick is out to beat them every single day of the week. The mainstream media will absolutely make sure of that. So they have to stick together. He's also a very, very good mind. Ben Habib. I've met him many times in this building. He's a Pakistani Muslim, deputy leader of the party, of course, previously, and he was somebody who communicates so well. And I think a lot of people, he resonates with a lot of people.
And for Reform UK supporters, ideologically sound.
Ideologically sound is absolutely right, and I think there has to be a place for him within the party. The only thing I would say is he didn't win his seat. And that will count.
I mean, is there a chance that he'll leave the party?
Yeah, I think there's a chance he'll leave the party, yeah, but I think they should do everything they can to keep him.
Producer Maria, what do you think? You're pretty close to Reform UK. Do you think that Ben Habib will leave the party? She doesn't know. That was a Keir Starmer answer.
Were you even speaking to her?
Yes, of course I was. She's all powerful on this show.
We love Maria.
She's my higher power, Producer Maria.
Maria is my god.
Well, isn't she? What do you think about this, Alex? The Nigel show, that's what they're calling Reform UK. Is that a problem?
Well, I don't think it is for Nigel, and I don't think it is for those who get what Nigel can do in the media. And he said he would get 6 million votes. Yeah. He got 4 million, and that's not bad. Now, maybe the 6 million was just something sexy to say on TV. 4 million's very good. And Aidan knows his sport inside out and his soccer inside out. Yeah. Now, Reform have been promoted, right? They need bigger players. Tice is twice as nice.
Right, so Tice is like your Harry Kane or something like that.
He needs bigger players.
Well,
he
Kane
needs
and Foden
famous faces.
were knocked out by the end of the game, and that's when we scored. So I actually think that we don't need people like that in politics.
Look,
go on.
Sorry, no, I was just going to say, sorry to interrupt. I was just saying that, you know, every party in every generation has somebody who delivers that X factor. And Tony Blair was certainly that for the Labour Party. When under John Smith, they probably wouldn't have won that election in 1997, certainly not by a bigger majority. And I think as long as Farage is delivering the numbers, then he must hold
But you know about the workings, as Alex rightly said, about football clubs, and there's no individual that's bigger than the club. When they think they are, normally there are problems.
Well, no, there are.
So is that a problem in Reform? The Nigel show, is that a problem?
No, not really, no, because if he's delivering the numbers, that's fine. Any player, it's not actually true that no player is bigger than the club. That frequently happens in football. It may not be.
And then they leave and earn more money.
Yes, exactly. So good, and that benefits the player. It benefits the club.
Was Alex Ferguson bigger than the club when he was at Manchester United?
No, I don't think he was. No, because he was famously not paid as well as he should have done. I mean, he was all incentivised, so he made up some money then.
But just a quick thought though. But I mean, Reform UK, they've been very successful. 4 million votes. I've got viewers and listeners to this show who are so happy.
And as a percentage of the number of people voting, that was actually higher than UKIP got in.
Plenty of my viewers and listeners feel they have a political voice now through Reform UK. And they're excited about the future. But just in terms of the checks and balances, you know, the democratic nature of a political party, oppositional voices, the grassroots, is that not missing from the Reform project?
Not necessarily, no, because if they're not delivering for the people who voted for them, then they'll be voted out. The democracy, they'll serve at the altar of, or not serve, but I mean they'll be dished up at the next election.
I disagree. I think that the Reform UK, what they are missing is that grassroots, bottom-up approach, and actually that they need to have a conversation about what that could look like.
But that comes with infrastructure, doesn't it?
And a bit of internal democracy, perhaps.
Internal democracy, but also the fact their selection process. I mean, we don't know who any of their candidates really were. They don't have the same rigorous selection process as main parties.
But as a young person in the TikTok generation, don't you think politics needs to get with it and get a bit sexy? And for some people, Nigel Farage is sex.
Don't forget
What do you think? Last word.
going to make me shy. I do think that Nigel Farage is a very, very good politician. He's very, very charismatic, immeasurably better than most. But I think that what we do care about is policy, and actually people like Ben Habib bring the brains behind the party. You need a pretty face, but you also need the brains.
Just very, very quickly, they had literally a couple of weeks to field something like 603 candidates, so the selection process is not exactly going to be fine-tuned, but they got there eventually, and I think it'll probably be a bit more streamlined next time, we hope.
OK, well, next up, as a man is convicted of planning to rape and murder ITV star Holly Willoughby, should more be done to protect celebrities? And if England beats Spain on Sunday, will Sir Keir Starmer be the biggest winner with a political bounce? We'll debate that next.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Meghan Markle has reportedly finished filming her new show for Netflix. It aims to celebrate the joys of cooking, gardening, entertaining and friendship.
Yeah, this comes after Prince Harry's Netflix documentary, The Heart of Invictus, failed to hit the right note with viewers missing out on the top 10 in the streaming charts.
So, will this next venture be a success? Well, joining us now is royal commentator Kinsey Schofield.
I know I've talked to the both of you about Meghan Markle potentially running for president, so this feels like a bit of a dud to go from Meghan Markle running for president to Meghan Markle's Netflix series about friendship and cooking. So she's wrapped this recent show. They rented a home near hers in Montecito, so that as their cooking set. And they're saying that this is really make or break for Harry and Meghan when it comes to their Netflix contract.
You think, Kinsey, it's fair to say that Meghan Markle has proved to be commercially a bit of a damp squib? Even in America, her native homeland, she's kind of Oprah without the audience when it comes to the cooking. Also, is she kind of, do you think... They saw her as the golden ticket, didn't they, to unlimited revenue, unlimited audiences, and it just hasn't happened.
Look, I think Meghan is a beautiful woman, and I do think she's talented, but I think how you treat people is incredibly important. And not only was she rumored to have been cruel inside Kensington Palace with several bullying allegations, but here in the States, Archwell Productions, their audio section, their scripted section, they've gone through several employees. And I think it's a reflection on the way that people are treated there. And I think as a viewer, you might get that. You might feel that way, and maybe that is where the appeal has been lost.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Well, we're all very excited about Sunday. If England beats Spain on Sunday, will Sir Keir Starmer be the biggest winner? Would victory in the Euros be a political windfall for our new PM? What do you think, Aidan?
No. I mean, I don't think anyone's thinking about politics this Sunday for the game. I mean, if you think about it, I think ITV got 20.3 million viewers. That's more people, I think, than voted at the general election. And also, when you think on Sunday, it's an even bigger game. That number will probably increase to around about 23, 24 million. I don't think it's related to politics in any way. And I know Labour claim that England only win major tournaments while we've got a Labour government. You know, Harold Wilson was Prime Minister in 1966 when Bobby Moore went up and lifted the trophy. But no, absolutely not. And also, just one election. It doesn't actually need it. I mean, we've got no council elections coming up. There are no major ballots coming up. It's irrelevant and unrelated, but you can bet he'll try to milk it anyway. OK,
let me say, I've been a bit hard on Keir Starmer tonight. Here he is with our political editor, Christopher Hope. I've got to say, showing a good sense of humour. Take a listen.
Well, you'll be there in Berlin on Sunday, won't you?
Yes.
If football doesn't come home, will you resign?
No.
Just wonder, Alex Dyke, whether there might be a political bounce if England win the Euros.
Of course.
Do you think?
Aidan doesn't know what he's talking about, and he knows lots about politics and lots about football, but he's not marrying them up. The whole country will start spending like crazy, booking holidays, visiting Germany, and it will all be on Keir Starmer's watch.
And it will... How's it going to help us if they visit Germany?
Well, no,
because they will be going on, they will be buying outfits before they go. They will be flying on our airlines. But no, what I mean, that people will travel more in Britain. People will be happier. There'll be more barbecues. People might just go out and buy a new car.
Possibly a short-term bounce.
It will be short-term, but
it's going to be huge. It's going to be as big as '66. And don't forget, in 1966, when England won the World Cup, Britain was in recession then.
Yes, I agree with that. I agree with Alex on that one.
Right? People end up spending a lot more money, but also, I mean, for once I'm going to say, let's not talk about the economics. It's the patriotism, the fact that people are then going to feel as though England is one of the best countries in the world, and we are so proud to be British, so proud to be English.
Yes. And if Labour are right, they can own this. If they get why are there not more England flags up, particularly in London?
Yeah, correct. And I think I agree with you, because people will go out, they'll go shopping, they'll go spending, but also, Alex Dyke, it will create the narrative that somehow Britain is booming. Okay,
exactly.
You've got interesting. The growth figures for May were double what was expected, which is thanks to Sunak. But Starmer will claim that as a win.
Aidan's going to change his mind.
A little bit. I mean, I hadn't really considered the economic effect really, but I was more thinking what it meant for him personally and politically. But back in 2012, it did the London Olympic Games did lift us out. It gave us a little bit of a jolt out of recession that time, didn't it? So maybe.
Also, what about Tony Blair in 1997? Britpop. You had people like Noel Gallagher going in to meet the Prime Minister.
They were expecting the Bolshevik Revolution.
Politics became quite sexy, didn't it? I mean, you were on music radio at the time.
Yeah, but another very serious point is he hadn't been Prime Minister long before Diana was killed in that car crash.
Right.
And as tragic as that was...
I don't think that was his fault,
No, but as tragic as that was...
You've been on the internet again, haven't you?
As tragic as that was, it gave him a chance...
Philip, I beg your pardon. How dare you?
It gave him a chance to shine and be a responsible Prime Minister.
I agree, and he looked very statesmanlike.
Within a year, Damon Albarn was on radio saying that the Blair government had failed to deliver everything that him and all his fellow artists had asked for, and I think it was Nicky Campbell who said I think that lot thought they were going to get the Bolshevik Revolution.
I think we can all agree on one thing, and that is that if England win the Euros on Sunday, we are all going to be very, very happy indeed.
We are, definitely. What's your prediction for the game?
Prediction? Well, my uncle asked me this today, and I was like, I don't know. I think 2-1 to England, but I'm very, very apprehensive.
OK, briefly...
I'm saying 2-1 to England, but England have to bully that Spain side.
OK, Alex, prediction for Sunday?
Yeah, I would say, I think there's going to be a lot of goals, and I think it's going to be very, very stressy. 3-2 to England.
There you go. Come on, England. Thanks for watching. I'm back tomorrow at 9 for Mark Dolan. Tonight, Patrick Christie's is next.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast coming to you from the Met Office. Looking ahead to the weekend, and Sunday looks largely dry for many places, but through Saturday there will be some showers and some more persistent rain affecting eastern parts due to a weather system that's pushing its way in from the North Sea. So overnight, many eastern parts of England are going to turn largely cloudy, and there'll be some persistent rain for some of us. Further west, a greater chance of staying dry, but even here, some outbreaks of rain at times and quite a bit of cloud for many of us, though there will be some breaks in a few places over central western Scotland perhaps. Here temperatures could just about dip into high single figures, but elsewhere it's going to be a relatively mild start to the day tomorrow. It is also going to be a damp start for some eastern parts, starting off looking in the south though, across central southern parts.